Do you understand what's required in a personalised learning plan or an IEP or some other documentation with the same name? I'm often asked what's actually important and what is helpful to teachers and what is helpful to the students who are being supported in those classrooms. Take a watch of the video and I'll explain what's critical. Hi, I'm Tracy Ashbridge. In this video, I'm going to talk about personalised learning plans, IEPs, adjustment plans, whatever your school chooses to call them. And they are called different things, all different schools across Australia and across the world. This is part of a video series where I'm explaining different parts of my role, where I take you through how I can help you to understand the role of being in that learning support role and making sure that you are doing the best to support those students. So, what do we need in a plan? We need the basics. Student name, student date of birth, they're pretty critical in case you've got two John Smiths. What's the diagnosis? Who diagnosed them? When were they diagnosed? That's useful historical information. The start date and the end date of the document. Maybe the student's class, that depends on your school context. Maybe you want to include any information around the NCCD, although teachers sometimes get stuck on that information and go, but this is a supplementary student. Well, that's what they were on first Friday in August last year. They may not be a supplementary student right now. They may be substantial, extensive, maybe QDTP. Just depends on how they are going. And that's like fluid data, so that's possibly not useful data for teachers to have because they can get stuck on that information. So what other key information is worth including? Definitely information around the diagnosis. Who diagnosed? When was it diagnosed? Was this diagnosed last year? 4 years ago? Is this something that maybe needs a review? Particularly with speech and language that was diagnosed in prep and the child's now in year 10. That data may not be relevant, but it may be relevant. It's useful to know that things have been going on for a long time. I've just worked with a parent recently who said, yep, this has been going on since they were very small. Back in prep in year 1, we were concerned about this. So there's some historical information that's useful. I always include the brief summary of the data that comes from those reports. Now, the psychologist reports could be up to 30 pages long. Very few teachers have the time or the knowledge of how to read and interpret that. A lot of that information is very repetitive if you read many of them because it explains what the test is, and that is in everyone. So you don't need to read those once you get cluey about reading them. But how to interpret the WISC data and the Wyatt data and any other assessment that was done. So I just summarised those there so the teachers don't have to go back to that document if they don't need to. Also thinking about what the student's strengths and interests are. It's great to know the student is really, really obsessed with trucks because if there's something going on, you can use that to help you work through something. Or they're really into Pokemon or dinosaurs. That knowledge is really useful. I also include what the functional impact is. One student with dyslexia is not the same as another student with dyslexia. They may be able to read really, really well, but their spelling is atrocious and they need masses of support to help them put down in writing what they want to say. It may be that you've got two students with autism, can be completely different in how they need to be supported and how the functional impact gets them. So once I've done the basics about the student, some information about the overall picture, I then look at the fine-tuning of some adjustments. Now, I personally, on my adjustment plans, have a massive, extensive, long list that I actually created with some colleagues a few years ago, and we actually delete back from that as a start. So we're thinking about, do we need to check in regularly? Do we need to check in every 10 minutes? Do we need to check in, have somebody almost on a timer in my head, I have to go check in. Do I need to scribe for this student? How am I going to do that? Do I need to make sure that when I'm designing my lessons, that if I'm doing something electronically, if I can have a voiceover, that's going to mean that that child can just listen to the instructions because they won't be able to read them easily. Great in the early years because nobody can read the instructions, so if everybody has a voiceover, hallelujah, universal design for learning helps everybody. That one adjustment for one student, let's do that for everyone because that's going to benefit everyone, including the teacher. So once we've done that, gone through, we look at instructional adjustments, environmental adjustments. Remember with young students, we can't ask them to adjust to the world around them. We have to adjust to the world around them. And we work eventually towards a 50-50 where they come a little bit and we offer a bit. but it's in the very early stages. We need to make sure that we accommodate for them. They're not ready to make accommodations to us. That's developmental. And then the last part depends on your students. So for students, for us with an IEP, an individual education plan, we would include goals around developing reading or spelling or social skills. But that depends on what you're required to do in your jurisdiction. So the key thing then is once you have done this document, everybody needs to sign it. Now, if you're audited for NCCD, one of the key things they're going to look at is, are the documents dated? Now, we use a DocuSign process. So when it gets sent to the parent, it's done electronically and it comes back with a signed date on it. So we can't actually miss having a date next to the signature, which is a relief for me because we send out a lot. So that's really critical, getting the document signed by the parents and by key staff in your school. That's up to you to decide who signs it. I get everyone who teaches the student to sign it, because that way they can't say, I didn't know that student had a diagnosis, because they've had the opportunity to read the document and they've had the opportunity then to sign off. And they know that all those documents are then also kept stored somewhere electronically, so they can be easily accessible. So we have a system where we have all the students' information and there are electronic student files. Those plans get saved into there so everybody can see. Everybody can find them, anybody can read them, well, within the school community when they need to read them. So they're always accessible. So, you know, teachers working after school out of hours, oh, what was Johnny's diagnosis? They can type it in and they can find that information anytime. Hope this is helpful. Please like and subscribe, and then you can find out the next video when it comes out.